for those who might not have figured out their purpose or who may feel as though they're not walking or living in their purpose, continue to figure out what that is and give yourself permission to have time and opportunity to figure out what that is. And if you don't know what it is today, if you don't know what it is next week or next year, keep going toward figuring it out. Don't stop, because you do have a purpose. We all have a purpose. That's just not some esoteric idea. I believe that we each have an individual purpose to fulfill on this earth and in this life. And if you give yourself the opportunity, the time, and permission to do it, I believe you'll figure it out.
Kevin, it has been a long time coming, and I've truly, truly been looking forward to chatting to you again. I know we've chatted in the past once or twice, but I am so excited to share your story with people. I think it's so important. So yeah, for those of you, the listeners who don't know you, give a little intro.
Wow. Well, it's good to see you as well. And I'm excited to be here, happy to be here. I hope that what we share together today will inspire or encourage someone. And so I am Kevin M. Yates. I live in North America, in the U.S., and I reside in a little suburb right outside of Chicago called Matteson, Illinois. My background is training, learning, and talent development. I've been in the industry now for, a little over 30 years. I am known in the industry, in the global training, learning, and talent development industry, as the L&D Detective. And that is because, similar to Sherlock Holmes, I solve mysteries. Sherlock Holmes solves murder mysteries. I solve measurement mysteries. And so that is the work that I am focused on. And that is where I believe I'm adding the most value to the global training, learning, and talent development industry. And I also founded and lead a nonprofit called Meals in the Meantime. And that is my life's work. That is where I find joy and fulfillment and purpose. And what we do is help people who are experiencing food insecurity or who have no access to food, where access to food is inequitable. And we help people with free, fresh, healthy, high quality grocery bags of food. And we do that through pop-up food pantries. So that's a little bit about me, who I am, and what I do.
I love that. And we are going to dig into it, what brought you to that mission, absolutely, in our chat. But now, as I said, my favorite part of the show, we always go all the way back in time, Kevin, to your young you. Like, do you remember, like, what was that first paycheck that you earned? What were you doing? How old were you? Tell us the story.
I do remember my first paycheck. I was 16 years old, of legal age to work here in the U.S. And I was working at a pharmacy in downtown Chicago as a stock boy. And I cannot remember the name of the pharmacy. I remember it was on a street called Wabash Street, and our elevated train system, which we called the L, was like right outside. So I remember the structure. I remember hearing the train roll by. And, again, I was a stock boy. And so I was responsible for unloading the truck of products, staging those in an area that was in the basement. I had to put them on a conveyor belt, like the big boxes. I had to put those on a conveyor belt, which took them down to the basement of the pharmacy. And that is where I would then stage those boxes, cut them open, and get them ready to take out whatever product it was that was in that box and take it back upstairs and put it on the floor, on the shelves for customers to buy. I also remember one of my responsibilities at the end of the day was cleaning the store. So mopping the floors, dusting off the cabinets. And then my least favorite part about that job was having to clean the bathrooms at the end of the day. I did not like that. But that was my first job.
Oh, yeah, yes, that I get that. That is the worst part.
Yeah.
And working so young, 16, I also started working very young. And actually, funny enough, it's not something I planned, but most of the guests that come on the show started working at a super young age. And I always am fascinated, like, what did that teach you? How did you grow up? What was some, hard parts? Because essentially you're a kid, in the big wide world.
Yeah, I think that the biggest lessons that I learned at that particular point in my life as a young man was the importance of accountability. Simply put, because I needed to be at work on time on the days where I was working, right? So there was that level of accountability. And then there was the responsibility that I had for the work that I was responsible for, even the work that I didn't like doing so much, like cleaning out bathrooms, right? But that was a part of the job. That was a part of the role description. I knew what I was getting into, even at the age of 16. And so my biggest takeaway from that experience was learning how important it is to be accountable and responsible. And the good news is, I think because of my lineage, I come from a family with a hard work ethic. I was able to meet the responsibilities of the role, even at such a young age. And I took pride in my work as well. So, I think that for me, the biggest takeaway again was accountability, responsibility, and pride in your work. Those are ideas and lessons that carry with me even today. So
Mhm.
started at 16 and at the age of, I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but even at this age, I'm still carrying that with me.
Yes, I won't ask your secret safe with you. I'm like, okay, let's just keep that quiet. My kids know how old I am, which is
Yeah,
a
yeah,
problem
yeah,
because they love to say it all the time.
yeah, yeah.
All right, so that's awesome. How long did you stay in that role, and then what happened? Immediately afterwards, you were doing that while you were still at school, I'm assuming, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
finished
So
up school. What happened? That first sort of out of school work.
yeah, well, actually, so that was, I believe, my sophomore year in high school. So that's
Mhm.
what, 10th grade. By the time I reached my senior year, what would that be, the 12th grade? I had another job working at a popcorn store. And this was an amazing job because it was a popcorn store with 32 flavors of popcorn. And I used to remember all 32 of those flavors. So I was like 17 or 18. But they have very unique flavors like amaretto sour and pizza and bubblegum and taco and cheese and bacon, pina colada, bubblegum, um, just all these amazing different kinds of flavors, right? So, I did that for about a year. And then at the end of that year, it was time for me to go to college, to university. And so I went to university in Virginia, Hampton University, for 4 years, where I majored in business management, came out came out of college, not really knowing exactly what I wanted to do. So to be honest with you, I stumbled for the first few years right out of college because, again, I had a degree in business management, but didn't know what I wanted to do with it and really wasn't sure about where I wanted to go in my career. Ultimately, what I discovered is that I have a passion for teaching and learning and education. So after being out of school for a few years, I went back to school and got a master's degree in education with a focus on curriculum and instruction. And then I started teaching in Chicago public schools, did that for a very short period of time because I realized that, unfortunately, the salary and income of a Chicago public school teacher did not allow for the types of hopes and dreams and aspirations and goals that I had for my personal life. So knowing that I had a passion for teaching and learning and education, I transferred that passion to corporate training where I could still continue to teach and promote learning and promote education just in a different environment and an environment where the earning potential was a lot higher. And so my first role in training and learning at the corporate level was with a small community bank on the south side of Chicago. And that ultimately led to different types of roles in different types of industries with some amazing brands. And so over the past 30 years, I have had roles with like Meta, previously known as Facebook. Actually, that's where I retired from. That was my last role. I've worked with McDonald's. I've worked with Kantar. I've worked with Grant Thornton, Chicago Tribune, Kemper Insurance. And in those organizations, my roles were progressive and very diverse. So I have served as a facilitator, um, program manager, curriculum developer, learning technology, learning solutions, leadership development, onboarding. And then most recently, when I retired from Facebook, I was very focused on impact measurement and impact analytics, which is the work that I continue to do now. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the trajectory of what my career looks like.
Yeah, yeah. I want to go a little bit backwards again because the people who listen to this podcast are often, in a career, they might be a little bit stuck, not really knowing what to do. And you mentioned that just very briefly, but I'm sure
Yeah.
at the time it was hard and difficult and could be heavy. How did you feel in that moment? Like, did you feel that you wasted your time or that you're just lost and that you're going to be a failure or, and then how did you get through that?
Yeah.
Because I think those moments are very important in our lives. And when we're in it, we don't realize it, but in hindsight, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because at that particular point in my life, I was in my early 20s. And the perspective of an early 20-year-old fresh out of college is, I suspect, very different than that of, say, a 30-year-old or a 40-year-old or a 50-year-old. And so at that particular point in my life, it wasn't difficult because, when you're young, especially in your early 20s, you view the world as a place of opportunity, a place where you can explore, a place where there is permission to kind of figure it out, right? So I didn't feel any pressure. I didn't feel discouraged, but rather I was just excited at that particular point in my life about the opportunity to explore, to figure it out. So again, there was no pressure, and it wasn't difficult. It wasn't hard because at that particular point in my life, I saw the world as my oyster, right? I could kind of go in any direction that I wanted to. Again, I had youth on my side, right? Now, let's fast forward a few years later. I believe it was around 2016 where I had been in the global training, learning, and talent development industry for some years. And that was a point at which it felt as though I had done all that I could do because I had served in so many different roles and had worked in so many different industries. And I really thought that from an L&D perspective, in terms of career, that I had pretty much done all that there is to do. And so at that point in my career, and I was probably about 20 or so years in, I started to ask myself, what else should I be doing? Or is there something else that I could be doing? Because I was feeling a little bored and a little stuck, right? So I know what that feels like at that particular point in my life, right? And so what I did was go about the business of trying to find something different to do. I actually wanted to leave L&D. Well, it turns out that at that point in my career, I came in contact with two people, well, actually three people. The first two people are Jack and Patty Phillips with the ROI Institute. And they were talking about this idea of measuring impact and learning analytics. And at that point in my career, it was something I knew absolutely nothing about, but I wanted to learn more about it. And so that inspired me and motivated me to stay in L&D, but to take a different path in L&D. And the path that I chose was one that was focused on measurement and analytics. Around the same time, I met another person very, very well known in our industry, and his name is Dick Hanshaw, and he was focused on performance consulting. And that really sparked my interest because he talked about how the outcomes of training and learning and talent development should really be some type of impact on the way in which people are performing in their roles and in their work and in their jobs. So I combined the idea of how do you measure impact with what are you trying to measure, right? And that was exciting to me because where I decided to focus was on how do you measure the impact of training and learning on human performance. So I combined the areas of focus from those three individuals whom I met and whom inspired me to do that work. And I have been very successful, I believe, since then, because now my work is narrowly focused and intentionally focused on investigating the impact of training and learning on human performance. More specifically, I am measuring how training and learning as an experience and L&D as a function contributes to the workplace performance ecosystem. So I'm measuring the impact, not just of L&D, but the impact of the workplace performance ecosystem and how that ecosystem is driving business goals. So
Mhm.
that's the journey.
Yeah, that's so good. Because I feel like There was a moment in your career where you were a little bit, and one person uses this word, disenchanted.
Yeah,
Like you've done it, and it feels like Groundhog Day sometimes, and you just do it again and do it again, and this training course and that training course and this training course and that training course, and it can just feel a little bit monotonous.
yeah.
So I want to know how you met those people, and then what conversation did you have? Like, did you go to, Patty's? I know they run programs. Like, did you go to the program
Mm-hmm.
and feel
Mm-hmm.
inspired, or did you meet them somewhere and have a conversation? How
Yeah.
did that relationship start?
Yeah, I actually met. So I met Patty Phillips at a conference, a workshop, right outside of O'Hare Airport here in Chicago. I'll never
Mhm.
will forget it. It was an afternoon, and I was sitting front row, and this woman was in the front of the class talking about this idea of measuring impact, and I'm like, wow, that's quite an idea. And so after her presentation, I literally went up to her, shook her hand to let her know how inspiring and motivating it was and how it resonated with me. And on the spot, I asked her if she would be my mentor in that space, in that discipline. And she agreed. Um, and then ultimately, she invited me to attend one of the workshops that she and her husband, Jack Phillips, host through the RI Institute. It was a 5-day workshop. Never will forget it. It was in Atlanta, Georgia. And me attending that workshop really changed my career. It changed my thinking. And it really gave me something to latch on to in terms of the work that I wanted to focus on. And so that's how I met Jack and Patty. And I lovingly refer to them as my measurement mom and dad. We are still very much connected. I still rely on them for coaching and advice. And they have supported the work that I do. And that makes me very grateful because that gives me credibility because they are known globally for the work that they do with the RI Institute. And so that's how I met Jack and Patty. Similarly, I met Dick Hanshaw, the performance guru, at a conference. It was in Indianapolis, and it was hosted by the International Society for Performance Improvement. So he was leading a workshop. Same thing with Patty. I was inspired by his workshop where he was just really focused on performance as an outcome of training and learning and professional development. And so, again, I went up to him after he finished his presentation and I said, Dick, I'd like to really be your protege. I'd like to learn more about this idea of performance. And he agreed. And so he and I remained connected. Interesting story. So, about 3 or so years ago, now Jack and Patty live in Birmingham, Alabama, and Dick Hanshaw lives in North Carolina, I think right outside of Charlotte, if I'm not mistaken. So it was a year where I was wanting to show gratitude to those who have poured into me. So I flew to Birmingham just to take Jack and Patty out for dinner as a way to say thank you for supporting me in my career and my work. Thank you for being the voices in the rooms that I am not in, recommending me and pushing my name forward. And then I did the same for Dick Hanshaw. I flew to North Carolina, invited him out for a breakfast, and what I really want to do was just thank him for the role that he played in my career. And so those are three individuals who have just been very pivotal and who have really helped me be the L&D detective that I am today. So I stand on some really massive, big, incredible shoulders.
Hmm. Oh, it's hard not to talk shop because this conversation, I don't want to dig too much into the learning and development side, but what I am picking up, which I absolutely love, I love this part of your story, is you're not just there to passively listen to someone. So when that strikes, and I feel like, and even when you speak, right, you light up. I can see it. And you just seize that moment, right? Like you go up and you speak to the presenter and you're like, wow, that was great. And I want to be your protege. That's the word you used. And I just love that. And I don't see that enough. I do not see people doing that, and even myself, if I'm to be honest, there was a conference I attended and one person did really stand out to me. So I stood in line to go say hi and, but that was it. I was like,
Yeah.
hi, thank you. Uh, what advice would you maybe give even to me of if you feel so inspired, how did you approach those conversations that
Yeah.
for them, it feels like it was an easy yes?
Yeah, I would say take action on what you're feeling, take action on the inspiration. So if you are attending a conference and there's someone who is speaking or presenting a workshop and they have inspired you in such a way that you want to connect beyond hello, how are you? Thank you. Great presentation. If you want to connect beyond that, seek that person out, preferably in that moment, right? Because that is the moment. And I would say don't be afraid because more often than not, speakers and presenters are just normal people. And I hope that most of them have the same philosophy that I do. And that is that we do what we do because we want to help. Now that I'm on the other side of that, I am fortunate and blessed to be able to literally travel the globe in different countries, different cities. And there are people who come up to me after my keynote or my presentation, my workshop to say, I am really inspired by what you do. Can we talk later? Can I connect with you? And my answer is always yes. There is no harm in me saying yes, particularly if I have inspired someone and motivated someone to want to learn more about what I do, learn more about how to measure the impact of training and learning. I'm happy to do that because it then serves, I believe, it serves our community. I am very community focused in terms of the L&D community, and the more people that I am able to help and support in our community, the more likely it is that there will be some habits and some practices that are going to change, because that is what I focus on, changing some of the habits that we have about measurement that just don't work and that we know don't work, but yet we continue to do what doesn't work. So my goal is inspiring and encouraging people to do something different. And if I have inspired and motivated someone to do something different, and I do that with a keynote or a workshop, and they want to connect with me and they want to learn more about it and they want to do it themselves, then I think I have a responsibility and a commitment to support those people so that we can all work together to move the profession along. Yeah. So long as
Yeah.
to your question, but I think the bottom line of what I'm saying is don't be afraid to approach the presenter, the keynote speaker. Don't be afraid to approach her or him and ask if there's a way in which you can connect in ways that might be similar to a mentorship or, a coaching, or just, stay connected as a resource.
Mm, mm. Oh, I love that. And I love that it's come full circle for you. So now I
Yeah.
want to know, right? We know you now, like I know you now, where you are, the success you've had, but becoming and branding yourself as the L&D detective is firstly well done. That's super cool.
Thank you.
But my actual question is, what prompted that? What was the first client you had? How did you get that first piece of work?
Yeah.
And then how did you build from there? Like take us back, and this is what I'm thinking now is people say, don't judge someone by their chapter 20 when you're in your chapter 1. So speak to the people in their chapter 1. How do they build this, L&D detective, whatever it is for them? Tell us the start for you.
Yeah, it really is a unique journey for all of us in terms of how we get to where we want to go. And, full transparency, I wasn't very strategic about the L&D Detective brand. This came about while I was still in full-time employment, right? Because I've been doing consulting work now for about 3 or so years. But prior to that, I had full-time roles, right? So my last full-time role was with Facebook, where I served as measurement principal. And then prior to that, I had a full-time role with McDonald's, where I was working in learning technology. And then prior to that, I was at Kantar Media, where I was working in learning operations. And then prior to Kantar, where was I? I can't remember. But anyway, I've been a few places, man, and I've served in a lot of roles. And so the building of the brand, it just evolved on its own. And if we just talk about the L&D Detective brand, that is not a name that I came up with on my own. It came as a result of different conversations with different people in the industry. And, people just were kind of drawing an analogy between my work and Sherlock Holmes's work, right? So Sherlock Holmes was doing the work of solving murder mysteries, and mine was the work of solving measurement mysteries. And so it just kind of made sense in terms of the perspective of creating this brand name that kind of describes who I am, what I do, and that's where the L&D Detective came from. I put it out there. I remember I even once was kind of playing around with a logo, and I did a crowdsourcing on LinkedIn to say, of the 3 and 4 logos that are here that represent the L&D Detective, which one looks best or works best or, portrays the message. So the L&D Detective brand really comes from the L&D community. I can't take the credit for it. I took it and I ran with it. And it has worked well for me because I do believe it is a very good analogy. When you think about the work of a detective collects facts, clues, and evidence to draw conclusions. And so that is what I do when I am measuring the impact of training, learning, and talent development and its contribution to the workplace performance ecosystem. I'm looking for facts, clues, and evidence that can answer questions about impact and contribution. And so that's, in essence, how the L&D Detective brand was born. So your question was around, what ideas or what would I recommend for those who are working through the process of maybe establishing their brand or trying to figure out what their brand is. The first thing I would say is latch on to or connect with something that resonates with you. And I mean that from a perspective of the brand promise that you have or the brand value. So for me, I latched on to measurement. That's my brand value. That's my value proposition. And so different people have different areas in their work that they latch on to or for where they feel inspired or motivated. And so whatever that is, I would say let that lead and guide your brand. I think that the most successful brands are the ones that are authentic and not the ones that are made up because you think that's what you need to do. So I didn't create as my personal brand the L&D Detective because I felt like I was, forced to do it, like I had to do it. It just worked. And so I wasn't trying to put a square peg in a round hole. So the essence of what I'm saying here is that when you start to first think about your personal brand, think about what resonates with you. Think about what sets you on fire. Think about where your passion is. Think about the work in which you are engaged in that fulfills you the most, where you feel like you are serving the greatest purpose to yourself, and not only to yourself, but to the community or to your job or to your employer. That's where I would start. I would start with taking a look at where you are in your career and look at what brings you joy, what gives you a sense of fulfilling purpose, and let that then guide decisions that you want to make about creating your own personal brand.
Oh, there are so many good things that you said there.
Thank you.
Like just letting it be natural.
Yeah,
And that
definitely.
really, really hit a nerve for me because that's actually what happened to me. And it was through a mentor. So I had a mentor and it was very strange. It was my neighbor's my neighbor's best friend's ex-colleague.
Okay.
Like, like where these people come from.
Yeah.
And he was chatting to me and asking me good questions. And he was asking, what do you enjoy? And if, I was like, I really enjoyed, because in corporate, I just did this. It wasn't part of my job, but I would coach all the learning and development people in the team. And I loved that. That was like my favorite thing, which it wasn't part of my job.
Yeah.
And then he was like, well, do that. And, it was so obvious and clear, but I needed that person
Uh-huh.
to point it out. Like it wasn't obvious and clear to me. So
Yeah.
why I'm saying this, and because I want to dig into this, what role has mentorship, networks, conversations, because you kept saying it's the L&D community that helped me put this brand together, how important are the people around you and how did you build that? I think people are feeling a little bit isolated right now.
Yeah. That's a great question. I've never thought about it, but I think that, in terms of community, me building community was critically essential to the work that I do, particularly knowing that I wanted the idea of the work that I do to reach as many people as possible, right? And if you're going to reach as many people as possible, if you have a message, a thought, or idea, and you want it to gain some traction, I believe that one of the ways in which you do that is to build community. And so I started building community first through coworkers, then through professional organizations, then through attending conferences and workshops, and then ultimately through social media. So social media really helped me build community. And the community that I believe I have built is one that is focused on answering the question, how do you measure the impact of training and learning as an experience and L&D as a function? And so it's deliberate, it's intentional. It's about making connections. It's about building relationships. It's about giving. It's about taking. It's about being accessible. It's about being kind. It's about being empathetic. And it's also about looking for where there's opportunity to solve problems, because at the end of the day, we're all working through something in our work lives. And so we're trying to figure something out. And I believe that I have figured something out. I believe I have a solution for how to investigate and measure the impact of training and learning. And so I think that that is what has helped me be successful. I am a community minded person. I am community centric. And I'm so very proud and so very honored to be part of the global community. I had no idea that my mindset and my message and my method would go outside the walls of the US, and it has. And so I'm very proud of that and very humbled by it. So I'm happy and excited that my community extends beyond the US and really reaches across the world.
Something you said it really hit me was giving and taking.
Yeah.
Because truly I feel, and this is how I personally feel, so many people listening will feel the same, but it's, give value, give value, give value, give value. And I feel still uncomfortable to ask for things, to take, like you say, but
Yeah.
that's how we actually add value. It's about, I have a solution that I have to offer you, and that is the value. And I suppose maybe you're taking money or, but that exchange of relationship, that's really powerful. And that's how we met, right? So I reached out. I was like, I'm new in America. Can you chat with me? And you said yes. And so that's how, we know each other.
Yeah, and I can contextualize give and take for you, right? So I definitely want to give and share knowledge, give and share information, give and share experience. But I don't know it all. I definitely do not know it all. There's always room and opportunity for me to grow and learn, which means that not only do I try to give back to the community, I also like to take what I can learn from the community and have it help me, and have it empower me to do something better, or to think differently, or to change a way, or to, do something different with behavior. I don't know what it might be, but my point is that when I say take, I'm speaking to the idea that there is value out there that goes beyond what I think and what I know. And so I am fortunate to be able to, again, give what I know to the community, but in those instances where there's something I can take in terms of knowledge and wisdom or experience, then I do that as well.
Oh, wonderful. All right, let's move to your other love, your other side, the other love of your life.
Yeah.
I always say learning and development is the love of my life.
Yeah.
Don't tell my husband that. But now your other love, Kevin, and I've watched your journey. I've watched from the beginning, we've been connected before you started that. And it's just been wonderful to see the passion, and I can see it in your posts, and I can see it in your photos, in that smile. So tell us where that came from, why you decided to go to do that, and you've said it many times, you're a community-minded person, so I'm sure that plays a role.
Yeah. Well, what you're talking about is just what brings me an incredible amount of joy and purpose and fulfillment, and that is the nonprofit that I started and lead. What did I start that in 2021, right in the midst of the pandemic, actually, and it is Meals in the Meantime. So we are a 501c3 nonprofit. We operate in Chicagoland, south suburbs. We help people who are experiencing food insecurity or people who don't have fair and equitable access to food. And we address food insecurity with pop-up food pantries where our food is free, fresh, healthy, and high quality. We provide grocery bags that are filled with healthy foods, the foods that nourish and sustain our bodies, the types of foods that serve our bodies well. So we focus on fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, proteins, grains, and dairies, the five major food groups. All of our fruits and vegetables are fresh, the natural source of whatever those nutrients and vitamins are that are coming from those foods. And we do it, again, through drive-through pop-up food pantries. And so with our volunteers, we go into different communities. We pop up our tent. We assemble our bags of food. We fill those bags of food. Our volunteers help us with that. And then our volunteers also help us distribute those food items at our pop-up food pantries. And that is the work that I am so excited about. It is so important to recognize and tell the truth and be honest about the fact that there are thousands, millions of people who don't have access to food. And food is one of the most basic needs that we have as human beings. And so for me, in our small way, if we can impact communities and provide meals for people who would otherwise be hungry, then we've done a great and wonderful thing.
Mm-hmm. And why food? So yes, of course, it's basic human right, basic human need. Why did you choose food? Why did you choose this cause?
Yeah. Well, it was divinely led, and I consider it to be a divine assignment. So I didn't come up with this idea on my own. There was a day, I believe it was March 9th. It was a Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. But I was laying in bed, just kind of thinking about my life, thinking about what I have done, what I have not done, what else could I be doing going forward. And the idea of helping people who need food came to me. And again, I believe it was divine inspiration. And so, to answer that question, it didn't come from me. It wasn't my idea because my background is not food pantries. My background isn't even 501c3 nonprofits. But when there is divine assignment, I believe that there is also divine preparation. And so it has been very successful. I have taken the vision, ran forward with it, and I am proud to say that to date, we have given away more than 2,500 bags of food and more than 27 tons of food. And so again, the inspiration did not come from me. It came from the above. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And I love it so much. I love watching the journey and, what's next? What's next on your career path? What does the next year look like? Maybe we can't look
Man,
further than a year.
the next year. So
Yes.
there's a
Yes.
lot in my head. What I'm
Mhm.
really trying to figure out is what is the right proportion of focus for me. Meaning, I have the L&D Detective brand, and then I have Meals in the Meantime. And so the next year for me looks like trying to figure that out. It could very well be that it's 50-50. I don't know yet. It could be 80-20. It could be, I don't know, 60-40. And so what I want to figure out is what is the right allocation of my time and my talent to each one of these brands, because I don't want to abandon either one. But I also don't want to do so much in one that it doesn't give me time for the other. So for me, the next year is an exercise, a very personal exercise of really figuring out how and when and where I want to allocate my time as it relates to the L&D Detective brand and as it relates to Meals in the Meantime. And who knows, it may be something that I don't figure out and that I just continue to do what I'm doing now
Mhm.
in terms of just kind of working through it. So I'm excited, though, at the idea of coming to a conclusion about what the right allocation is. And again, the answer may be that, it's dynamic and that I can't have a set proportion of time. It may be that the answer is, Kevin, you just need to roll with the punches or just let it be dynamic and just roll with that. Or it could be, Kevin, you really do need to allocate 40% here and 60% there. I don't know. But to answer your question, what's next for me is figuring that out.
Hmm. Hmm. Yes, yes. And it feels like you're torn right now.
I am.
There's options. You love both, which I suppose is a good problem to have.
It is.
Two
It
very
is.
exciting pathways.
Yeah. Because there are
Yeah.
two communities that I serve, right? There's the
Hmm.
global L&D community that I serve, and then there are communities who are experiencing food insecurity that I serve, and I'm committed to both, and that's why it's a struggle for me to figure that out. But I believe that there is an answer, and I will figure that out.
Yes. You use that word a lot, serve and community. And, I feel like you're there to lift others up. Where do you think that came from?
Um, Probably my family. My grandmother was someone who was very focused on helping others. I saw it in the work that she did and the things that she did. Um, and I also know that I'm just not in the world to be alone. And I believe that there is value in not thinking about only myself. I believe that there is value in thinking about others. Um, and I also just find joy in serving. I do. I mean, I really do. I find joy when I'm on a stage and I see light bulb moments going on in the audience when I share a concept or an idea, and they're like, "Wow, I never thought about it that way." That brings me joy. And when I can put a bag of food in someone's hand who is otherwise hungry, and when I see the look on their face when they look at the quality and the quantity of what's inside that bag and how it's so different than what they might be used to, I have a great deal of purpose there as well. So yes, serving is at the heart of what I do for both communities, for the L&D global
Yeah.
community and for communities experiencing food insecurity. Service
Mm-hmm.
is at the root of it all.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that. It's like, it's your core.
Yeah,
that is your core.
it is.
All right. I want to ask you, because you've lived this full career, this full life, and you found purpose. Now, from me putting the timeline together, you said you retired from Meta, and then you opened Meals in the meantime. So you've sort of found this, like, I feel like a second breath, a second wind, or so, like
Yeah,
there's no stopping you. I feel like I almost feel like you're just getting started with certain things, like you only up from here. Where does that energy come from, that passion? And then my follow-up question to that is, what would you say to people that are feeling a little bit, and again, I'll use that word, disenchanted. And I speak to a lot of people who are in that space right now,
yeah,
right? The world is just a little bit harder, and the world of learning and development is a bit harder, but it's not unique to learning and development. And people are feeling a little bit deflated. And,
yeah.
so firstly, where does your energy come from? And then what would you say to people who are not feeling that energy?
So my energy comes from a sense of living in purpose, right? And so believing, and I would dare say knowing that I am living in my purpose, that just creates a fire, because what greater life is there to live than one where you know you are living in your purpose, like the reason for which you were put on this earth. And when you know that you are living that, when you have tangible evidence for it, there's so much joy for me that comes from that, knowing that everything that I do, from the work to help people measure impact, from the work to help people who need food, um, that just comes from a place of joy for me. And I get joy when I'm able to do that for both worlds, right? In terms of those who may be listening or watching and struggling with purpose, the first thing that I would encourage and really ask and say to you directly, yes, you, that person that's feeling that right now, be kind to yourself and give yourself permission to figure it out. If you haven't figured out what your purpose is, if you haven't connected with it, give yourself time, opportunity, and permission to figure that out. Don't beat yourself up. I really don't believe you have to be a certain age to figure that out. I figured that out later in life, right? So it doesn't mean that you have to figure it out and be sure about it in your 20s or your 30s or your 40s, maybe even your 50s. I don't know where people are in their journey in terms of trying to figure that out. But I would just say, as long as there's life, there's opportunity. If you don't figure it out until you're 80 something, you have figured it out. So the essence of what I'm saying is, for those who might not have figured out their purpose, or who may feel as though they're not walking or living in their purpose, continue to figure out what that is and give yourself permission to have time and opportunity to figure out what that is. And if you don't know what it is today, if you don't know what it is next week or next year, keep going toward figuring it out. Don't stop, because you do have a purpose. We all have a purpose. That's just not some esoteric idea. I believe that we each have an individual purpose to fulfill on this earth and in this life. And if you give yourself the opportunity, the time, and permission to do it, I believe you'll figure it out.
Mm-hmm. That is excellent advice. Truly. I feel like I found that early on. And then, of course, as your journey goes, you're like, does it feel right still? Yeah. And, you might just pivot a little bit or completely, but just keep coming back to what's true for you.
Absolutely.
And I love giving yourself the grace to not have that figured out.
Yeah.
You don't need to live in your purpose every day, but definitely towards finding it and living in it, because
absolutely,
it certainly is a great feeling when you know what you're doing. Like, you do it if there was no money. Like, if I had all the money in the world, what would I do? My kids actually asked me that a couple weeks ago, and I was like, I would work. I'm sorry to tell you. But, I would travel more, but I would still do this work, which is, I think, a good measure.
Absolutely.
In this world of immediate everything, what would you say we're not speaking enough about what it takes, the effort, the energy, the time, whatever it is? What are we not speaking enough about to build that career, so work specifically, that career that you are proud of and that you do want to do? What should we be, shouting from the rooftops?
I think one of the things that we should consider is external expectation versus internal motivation, right? So here's what I mean by that. There may be external expectations for you to show up a certain kind of way. There may be messaging in your sphere that says that you must do this or must do that, that you have to do something a certain kind of way, that you have to move through the world and the universe a certain kind of way, that you have to move through your career and your work a certain kind of way. There's that. Those are the external voices. The internal motivation may be saying something very different, right? So internally, you may be thinking, I know that society says I need to go in this direction as it relates to my career, but that's not the direction I want to go in. I really want to go over here. Or society says that I should really be focusing on this, but I really want to focus on that. So when there's this conflict of external expectation and internal motivation, that's where there is conflict. And so one of the ways in which I believe you can resolve conflict is to get in touch with your own internal motivations for where you want to go in your career. That's professional. And I would even apply that to personally. Where do you want to go in your life? Minimize those voices that cause you conflict, and maximize those voices, including your own internal voice, that gets you to what internal motivation is for you and what that looks like and how it shows up in your own life. So when we can kind of resolve those differences between external expectations and internal motivations, I think that somewhere in the middle is where we find a purpose-driven life. And that's where we find authentic joy, authentic purpose, and most important, a sense of fulfillment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, so good.
Well, thank you.
I'm just trying to reflect on that, just taking a moment to take it in. And I think you made such a valid, strong point. And it's recognizing that.
Yeah.
It's knowing where that comes from, like society or my family or my parents or my spouse, whatever it is expecting this of me, but it just doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
And understanding that and recognizing it, I think, is probably the hardest part.
Hmm.
So yeah,
And
thanks
giving
for that.
yourself permission to disagree with
Mhm.
external expectations. You don't have to agree
Yeah.
with it, and you don't have to feel guilty because you don't agree with it. If it doesn't resonate with
Mm.
you for whatever reason, that's kind of like your internal guide saying, that's not quite right for you, or that's not quite good for you. So listen to yourself, trust yourself, listen to that inner voice, that one that is really trying to protect us. That's what I
Yeah.
believe. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there a moment in your life that you remember was a specific challenge for you that you really had a hard time, and I don't know what it is, finding your purpose, stuck, whatever it was. What was that moment for you?
Yeah, I remember one of the most difficult points in my life was the June of 2016. I was working for a company that was going through a restructure. They were changing the way they worked, they were changing the way they operated. And as a result, my role was eliminated. Now, the saving grace for me in that situation was that, I wasn't released for performance. I wasn't fired, or, I wasn't like, there wasn't an issue with how I was working. It was a pure business decision, and the business wanted to find ways in which they could reduce costs, reduce headcount, all of that. So I didn't internalize it, right? And I actually walked away with a pretty generous severance package. So, so it was a pretty good deal. Fast forward a year later, and I had not found a job. My thought was that at that particular point in my career, I had a great reputation, had some really good experience, had done some really great work. And so I'm thinking, enjoy a few months off, um, let the severance package sustain you, and ultimately you'll find a job, right? Well, it didn't happen as soon as I thought it would. And I did start to internalize it because at that point I was of a certain age, and had a certain amount of experience. And the unfortunate reality is that there are times where skin color does come into play. So I was thinking,
Mhm.
how difficult is it going to be for an African American man of that particular age to find a new role or a new job? And I did start to internalize it because I wasn't getting any opportunities. Nothing was coming along. And then I started to have all those thoughts about why, right? That was hard. That was difficult because, up to that point, I had relied on the fact that I had great experience, that I had great reputation in the industries in which I had worked, the companies in which I had worked, was known as a high performer, was known as someone who was engaged, was known as a skilled worker. But for some reason, I could not find a job at that particular point in my career. And it was hurtful. I mean, it was really hard, not to mention the fact that, I had obligations to fulfill, financial obligations. And so in the absence of income, it made it that much more difficult. So um, I hunkered down, continued to believe that the right role was out there for me, and it was. It just took a year and a half for me to connect with it, but it was waiting for me. It was there. It just took longer than I wanted to. But it was one of the most valuable lessons and experiences that I've had in my life, and as difficult and as hurtful and as painful as it was at that particular time. This is going to sound a little crazy, but I'm glad I had it, because it taught me a lot, and it left me with lessons that carry with me even until today.
Mm, mm. Yeah, and so many people listening would have gone through this same thing. I certainly have been laid off, and it is devastating to self-esteem and not getting role after role and interview after interview and rejection after rejection.
Yeah,
It is tough.
yeah,
It is tough.
yeah. It was difficult.
Yeah, so yeah, thank you for sharing that, and I love your view of it was there. It was waiting for
Yeah,
me. It just took a little bit longer than I would have liked,
yeah,
and I think that's great words of comfort for people going through this. Yeah, I mean, I applied also for over 100 jobs when
mm,
I got laid off, and it was it was devastating,
yeah.
right? Because was a high performer, got some skills to offer you,
Mm-hmm,
all of
mm-hmm.
the things. So thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
And I'm glad it taught you. And in hindsight, those deep challenges are often
Yeah, yeah,
what builds character, what builds more resilience and strength. And for me, it made me realize my values. what I want to do, what I'm good at, what I like,
Yeah,
all
yeah.
of those things.
The
Yeah.
the end to end experience served me well, and I'm grateful for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure in the moment you were not grateful for it.
Not at
Well,
all.
that's how I
Not at
felt.
all.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, Kevin, we are coming up to time, and I ask you the final question of the episode. If you had to go back in time to young you, 20-year-old, 16-year-old, doesn't matter, what would you thank yourself for doing then that really set you up for your life that you've lived?
Ooh, if I had to go back and thank
Mm-hmm.
myself for something that I did that has served me well, I think it would be my education. Because, and by that I mean, so I have an undergraduate degree in business management, but I have a graduate degree in education with a focus on curriculum and instruction. And the graduate degree is what served me well because it was the point at which in my career that I knew exactly what I wanted to do. When I was in college, when I got my undergraduate degree in business management, I really didn't know. I just knew that I wanted to work in business, just loosely. But what served me well was the academic preparation that I had from my graduate degree that was the foundation of the work that I do now. So it was firmly rooted in this idea of how does education support and transform people. That's kind of like one of the takeaways that I had from my graduate studies. And I've carried that idea with me even until now. How does education, albeit training or learning and development, how does that support help transform people? And now my work is focused on measuring that, right? So that idea that I needed to go back to school to get firmly rooted in the ideas of what education and teaching and learning is what propelled me to be where I am today. So I would go back and say to what I think it was 25 or 26 at the time, I would go back and say to 26-year-old Kevin, you're making a smart choice here by continuing your education at Loyola University, which is where I got my master's degree from.
Nice. Good job, 26-year-old Kevin.
Yeah.
Good choices. All right. Well, let's wrap up now. Is time. And, we put links in the description, so we don't need to know to contact you on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I want to know, why should people contact you? What work could you do with them? And then how can people get involved in Meals in the Meantime?
Yep. So I believe that those who are listening, particularly potential clients and customers, one of the things that I am excited about is how I am helping organizations with their impact measurement strategy. Most important, I am helping my customers and clients with actionable strategies and actionable practices. They aren't aspirational, they are literally actionable. So I would invite listeners who need help with your impact measurement strategy or impact analytics to reach out to me. I'm happy to help. Happy to have a conversation just to explore ways in which I can help. Really excited about the opportunity to help organizations move the needle with the work that they're doing in impact analytics and measurement. I'm your guy. Contact me for that. I'm happy to help. And
Yes,
you
you
can,
are the guy.
yeah, and you can certainly contact me and reach out to me on my website at kevinmyates.com. That is where you will discover and see some of my clients and the work that I'm doing with the practice of measuring impact and using impact analytics to do that. Also, with Meals in the Meantime, I recommend and highly encourage and invite people to go to mealsinthemeantime.org. It is there that you can discover and take a look at the work that we're doing to help people who need food. And certainly, we have an area on our website where people can donate. If you'd like to be a part of our work that is helping people who need food with free, fresh, healthy, high quality groceries, I invite and encourage you to make a donation. Even consider being a recurring donor because that will help us as well. So those are some places where people can go to check me out and see the work that I'm doing, not only as the L&D detective, but also the work that I'm doing to help people who need food.
Love it. Thank you so much. And of course, all the links will be in the description. Kevin, it's been so nice to get to know you even better.
Thank you.
Such an honor. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. This has been a great conversation, and I appreciate you inviting me to have it. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Bye.